Welcome, everybody. I just want to say that CHAZAQ is like a supernatural organization. What they're able to accomplish and do, you just heard some of the events that they sponsor. It's miraculous. So I want to just express my CHAZAQ Tov for them allowing me to be here tonight to speak. And I really appreciate the opportunity. And I want to also express my gratitude to TorahAnytime.com that are spreading Torah all over the world. We know there's a pasuk that says, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, which means we're all together, we're all mixed together. So when you come to a Torah event, when you learn Torah, when you come to a class that CHAZAQ is giving, it's affecting not only us locally, but it's affecting Jewish people all over the world in a positive way. So this is what we mean by that. We know that in Judaism, there are 6 constant mitzvahs that we have. Just thinking that there is a creator, believing that there's a creator, is something that we get reward for just through machshava, just through thought. So when we think that there's a creator, we believe that there's a creator, it's a mitzvah. There's another mitzvah that states not to believe in any other deity, not to believe in any other God. That's a mitzvah. There's also a mitzvah to believe in God's unity, His oneness. There's a mitzvah to love Hashem, to fear Hashem, and to not intentionally turn your eyes towards immorality or to entertain apikorsis thoughts, heretical thoughts. Now, what's unique about those 6 mitzvahs? They're constant mitzvahs, and we accomplish them with machshava, just with thought alone. But we also know that we have many, many, many other mitzvahs that require what? Action. Not thought, but action. For example, if you giving charity, for example, you can't take the money's not going to come out of your wallet, out of your pocket by itself, right? You have to reach in and put it into the pushka. So most of the mitzvahs that we have require action, require us to do something physical. So having said that, we see that Judaism is really not a passive religion, but it's an action-oriented religion. It involves us to act. So this is where the health of the body becomes very important. Because if the body is sick, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, if the body is sick or the limbs are sick, then we can't act. We can't fulfill God's will, and we can't do mitzvahs. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to give this talk tonight, is to sensitize us and make us more aware of how important it is to keep the body healthy and to try to do what we can to keep ourselves healthy so we could fulfill God's will. And that's basically the purpose of keeping ourselves healthy, so we could fulfill God's will. And anything we do should be with that in mind. So let's go a little bit further. If you think about it for a second, the Ribono Shel Olam gave us, the Jewish people, we're less than 1% of the world population. He gave us a magnificent, beautiful Torah, and we should so much want to take care of ourselves to be able to fulfill this Torah and to do the mitzvahs, that our health becomes very important. I'm hoping that through tonight's talk, we should develop something called CHAZAQ Tov, which means appreciation for our health, and we should take steps. We should be proactive in taking steps to try to safeguard our health, and so on. Okay. We know that in the synagogue downstairs, there's something called an aron. The aron is the house for the Torah. It's the casing for the Torah. What the aron is to the Torah, the body is to the soul. The body is the house of the soul. And just as we give a lot of respect to the aron because of its proximity to the Torah, it has a certain holiness and a certain kedusha to it, it's the same thing with the body. The body has a certain holiness or kedusha because it's the house of the soul, which is a spiritual quality that God put into us. So this gives us another reason why we want to take care of the body out of respect for its holiness and why we want to promote the health of the body. Okay, just as we wouldn't do anything to harm the Aron, we wouldn't do anything to damage it, we want to treat the body the same way. We don't want to do things that harm it or damage our health. So the topic tonight is heart health. So you might be thinking, why that topic? There are so many different types or aspects of health I could have spoken about. We could have spoken about diabetes. We could have spoken about obesity. We could have spoken about many, many other illnesses, unfortunately, that afflict us. But I chose this topic of heart health for a couple of reasons. First of all, the heart has symbolism in Judaism. The heart is referred to or considered in Judaism to be the seat of the emotions, feelings. And we know when we say the Kriya Shema, we say B'chol Levavcha. We're supposed to serve Hashem with all of our heart. Okay, all of our heart. Meaning we're supposed to serve Hashem with emotion and feeling. So the heart, that's what the heart symbolizes in Judaism. To do the mitzvahs with feeling and emotion. We also know that physically, the heart and cardiovascular system, diseases of the heart disease, claims more lives than any other ailment. So, approximately 1 million people every year die of heart disease. We could see that this is not only in this country here, but in countries all over the world. It's still considered the leading cause of death throughout the world, pretty much. That's another reason why I wanted to talk about heart health, because of how serious of an illness it is. So I'd like to start off with a story. This story is about two men that are waiting to catch a train. And there's an announcement over the PA system that the train is going to be a half hour late. So the first person who hears that, he says to himself, this is not the worst thing in the world. I can handle it. It's not too bad. I'll get some work done. I'll send out some emails, whatever I'll need to do. Before you know it, the next train comes in. He's on the train. He's on his way. The second person who hears this announcement gets very upset, gets angry, starts to yell, scream, throws down his newspaper, raises his blood pressure, and he gets a heart attack and he dies right on the platform. Okay? So my question to you, first question I want to ask you is this. Who killed that man? Did he kill himself, or did the announcement kill him? What do you think? Killed himself, right? Okay, very interesting. Now, I want to tell you something. There's the Malbim.
You know, he probably had a very weak heart in the beginning. Because nobody...
Okay, you want to say he had a very weak heart in the beginning? Okay, so listen to what the Malbim, I want to tell you what the Malbim talks about. He says there's two ways that Hashem interacts in the world. There's something called laws that God uses to run the world. And when the world was created, God set in motion these laws. Let me give you an example. If I drop this, is it going to go up or down? Down. There's a law of gravity that God put into the world at the time of creation to run the world. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Every day you get up, you look at the sun. Has it ever changed? Nope. It always goes that same way. Let me give you some other examples. If you put, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but if somebody put their hand in a fire, it's going to get burnt, right? God put certain laws into the world, and the world operates according to these laws. If somebody were to take a cigarette and smoke, and the smoke enters the lungs were not designed by God to handle smoke. It's an irritant to the lungs. This is a law of the lungs, so to speak. And it's going to cause the lungs to smoke, to cough rather, and reject that smoke. I've heard Rabbi Mordechai Finkelman mention this many times. In other words, there's a natural consequence to our actions based on these laws that run the world. Okay, that's one way that God interacts in the world. The other way that He interacts is through nisim, miracles, and something called hashgacha pratis. which is the divine intervention or supervision of the world. So tonight's talk is going to focus more on the laws that God set up to run the world, which we call teva, certain nature that God put into the world. And we're also going to apply that concept of choices that we make, the natural consequences of our actions and how they affect us. So this is what we're going to talk about. So hopefully we're going to get into some things right now. So the first concept I want to give you, which we already mentioned, is that we could see that anger, there's a natural consequence to anger. Now, it's human nature. This is one of the parts of human nature. There's an emotion called anger. It's a negative emotion, but it's part of our human makeup, so to speak. The problem is, when we choose, many people will say, how many people here have heard the following saying? That person made me angry. Raise your hand if you ever heard anybody say that, right? Or that driver got me upset when he cut me off when I was driving. You've heard people say things like that? Right? So what you're going to do is you're going to blame, you're going to say, I didn't get angry, somebody caused me to get angry. But really that isn't true. Because we believe in a principle called bechira, which means free choice. That's what we mean by free choice. It means that person didn't get you angry. You chose to get angry. It was your choice. You really can't blame anybody else for your anger. But, translate for us?
Who is now the God, how to control his anger?
Okay, very good. So who is, she said, who is smart? Someone who knows how to control their anger. Very good. So what I want to do is I want to develop this a little bit further. So what's the natural, listen very carefully now. What is the natural consequence of anger? The natural consequence of anger is that it raises blood pressure. It also releases adrenaline-like hormones that cause the blood to become thick. Normally the blood is like water. But when a person gets angry, this is what happens. This is the teva that I spoke about, the nature that God put into the world. Anger causes certain consequences. The blood becomes thick because the hormones that enter the blood when a person's angry makes the blood thick. It also causes the arteries to constrict and narrow. So now you have three consequences of your anger that you chose. High blood pressure, thick blood, and constricted or narrowed blood vessels or arteries. Guess what you're more prone to now? You got it. A heart attack or stroke. And a certain percentage of heart attacks do occur when somebody is in a state of rage. And even when they recover from the heart attack, sometimes there are repeat heart attacks when they get angry again. So the first tip I'm giving you right now to better heart health is to take steps to control anger. Reduce your risk of heart disease by not getting angry. Easier said than done, right? It takes training to uproot a negative trait like this or a negative emotion, and we should do everything possible to try to uproot it. The rabbis refer to anger, they liken it to a state of avodah zarah. It's like a person is worshiping idols, because when a person's angry, it's like they're out of control. They have no control.
Somebody else controls them.
Yeah, it's like somebody else. Good. It's like somebody else is controlling them, and they can't think, they can't problem solve, they can't use their intellect when they're angry. And usually it leads to something very harmful and destructive, and oftentimes it can't be repaired, because the damage that's done when somebody's angry, it's like shooting a bullet from a gun. You can't call the bullet back after you've insulted somebody or whatever it might have been. Okay, so anyway, the point I'm making here is that anger is something that promotes heart disease, and we should try to avoid it. Now, it could be done. It takes training. It takes practice. Some people are more prone to anger than others. If you're more prone to anger than your neighbor or somebody else you know, that means that's a test that God gave you to work on. That's your test in life, to try to take steps to overcome anger. Other people have other tests. I'll just tell you a story I heard many years ago by a Rabbi Mendel Kaufman, who's the rabbi of the Young Israel in Briarwood. He said the following. He says, on Rosh Hashanah, we know everything is set up for us. How much money you're going to earn. Well, everything is all planned out on Rosh Hashanah. Nevertheless, during the year, some people they'll take on a second job. Or sometimes they might be taking a Torah class at night, and they might say to themselves, you know something, I need more money, I got to leave this Torah class, and I got to get some extra work. Guess what? It's not going to help. Because the money that you're going to earn from doing whatever work you're doing is already set. So taking an extra job or working an extra 6 hours is not going to help, because the amount that you need was set on Rosh Hashanah. But if you ask this person, why don't you do something to work on your anger? You know what the person will say to you? I can't do anything about that. That's my nature. It's punk verkehrt, which means it's just the opposite. If he exerted himself in the area of working on anger, he would really make a positive and constructive difference in his life. Instead, he's exerting himself to make more money by working extra hours or leaving a Torah class to do it, and it's not going to help. So what you want to do in life is you want to exert yourself where it's going to make a difference. And where it's not going to help, don't waste your time or energy. All right? So that's another point I wanted to make here. Okay, let's go. And by the way, stress and anger are somewhat related. When we have a lot of stress, it raises our cholesterol level. It causes also harmful things in the body. So reducing our stress level, talking out your problems to somebody, working on emunah and bitachon, having more, greater levels of faith and belief in Hashem, could help us in the area of controlling our stress as well. Okay, let me give you another tip on heart health. Here's the way I'm going to frame the next tip. Walking is the second best exercise in the world. So what question are you supposed to ask me when you hear something like that? Beautiful. I was hoping somebody would say that. What's the first? So it's not swimming, it's not jogging. What's the first? Anybody know? What is that? Davening. Well, that's a good answer. Okay. Laughing. Okay, good possible answer. Eating healthy. Okay, we're looking for an exercise now. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it is. Eating healthy is close also. What? Okay, you ready for the answer?
Drinking water.
Pushing yourself away from the table is the best exercise in the world. Eating less. The Rambam says the following. The Rambam says that overeating and bad foods is the cause of most disease. Oh, and he goes even as far to say that it's better to eat a little bit of a bad food than too much of a good food. That's how strong his point is on overeating and how damaging it is. He refers to overeating as a deadly poison to the body. And even though you'll never see it on somebody's death certificate, you'll never see died from overeating, I can tell you, not me, it's the Rambam, I'm just saying over what the Rambam says, that was the underlying cause. In other words, this is what leads to many of the afflictions and ailments and illnesses that we see in today's world. Okay. Matter of fact, even one meal, one large, heavy, fatty meal causes damage. The blood vessels will struggle to get blood through after a very heavy, fatty meal. And I personally know of a story where somebody passed away from a heart attack after eating a very heavy meal, a very fatty, heavy meal. So don't even think you can get away with it. Maybe even one time you put yourself at risk if you really overindulge and you have a very big, heavy, fatty meal. So again, that's a good question. What's considered heavy? Usually a person will know if they overdid it. They'll feel stuffed. They'll feel uncomfortable. You know what the Rambam says? He says you should stop eating when you're like 75% full, meaning you still feel there's room to eat. You're not full completely yet. He says that's a good way to train yourself to stop. Again, it's becoming more sensitive about your body and training yourself to try to eat less and not to overindulge and eat too much. Okay, having said that, so what do we have? 2 points so far. Reduce anger for better heart health. Second point is eat less. Okay, Next tip I want to give you, by the way, they have proven today that when somebody eats less, they restrict their calories, not starvation, but consuming less. They find that blood pressure, cholesterol goes down, they lose weight, their blood sugars go down, their whole body functions differently and feels better, they're more energetic, they have better health, and they reduce the risk of many illnesses. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Next point I want to make, I heard this said over in the name of Rabbi Moshe Turk, who's the one of the directors of the Jewish Heritage Center, which some of you are familiar with. He says, our ancestors' luxuries have become our necessities. So what do we mean by that? Our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, if they had a little piece of chicken for Shabbos, they were happy. That was a luxury to them. That luxury to them has become our necessity. In other words, we feel we have to eat fleischiks constantly, not once a day, sometimes even twice a day, 7 days a week, to a point where we ask ourselves, where's the beef, right? If you bring out a plate and it's filled with, I don't know, chickpeas and vegetables and fruits or potatoes or whatever it is, people are looking for the beef. It's a cultural thing. We've gotten used to eating large amounts of protein, eating it constantly, and I could tell you we overconsume protein, we overconsume it, and because of the unhealthy fats that are in animal protein, the saturated fats, we also can increase our risk for heart disease, even certain cancers and other illnesses by an overconsumption. Now, I want to just tell you that Judaism teaches us self-restraint and moderation. And it sets aside times, it designates times that are more appropriate for eating meat. There's Shabbos, there's Yom Tovim, there's a chasana, there's special occasions. There are times when having a more fancy meal and so on is appropriate. But I don't think it's in the spirit of Judaism to be eating the amount of fleischiks that we eat on a regular basis. I don't think it's really appropriate, and I do believe we overindulge on the amount of animal protein we consume, and it has health consequences. You could ask yourself, everybody do this right now, ask yourself how frequently you would eat meat if you had the shecht. I think we'd see a lot of vegetarians in the room, right? Okay, so anyway, the point I'm making is be a little conscious of this. Try to include more plant proteins in your diet. What do we mean by plant protein? Soy, beans, lentils, tofu, nuts and seeds. Plant proteins could replace some of your animal proteins during the week. And if you find yourself eating a lot of red meat, at least switch to a little more chicken and fish and try to incorporate more plant proteins. You'll be moving in a better direction. Maybe some low-fat dairy products and so on would be good choices. Also, you could eat protein the way the Chinese eat it. You know the way Chinese eat it? You ever go out to a kosher Chinese restaurant, you order, let's say, a chicken meal. They don't come out with a half a chicken on the plate. What you get is a lot of vegetables. You get little minced pieces of chicken mixed in with the vegetables. If you pull out the chicken, you got maybe 2 ounces. A lot of vegetables and some rice. That's the way to do it. In other words, make the animal protein the side versus the main. You follow? If you do that, it will also help you to promote better health and so on. Okay, I'm going to cover a few more points, and then we'll open up to some questions and comments that I'm sure you're going to have. Okay, another little question I want to ask you. There are people in the world, there's a group of people in the world, they have the fattiest diet in the world. Now you might think if they consume the highest amount of calories from fat, that they're going to have poor health, poor cardiovascular health, and so on and so forth. The interesting thing is this group of people have the healthiest hearts and cardiovascular system in the world. And they have the fattiest diet. They eat more fat than we do. And we eat the equivalent, by the way, of a stick of butter a day in the form of fat. So could anybody tell me who we're talking about and what is it that they're consuming that gives them such a good cardiovascular picture? Anybody know? Good fats. Good fats as well. What are good fats?
Avocado.
Avocado, good. You're close.
Olive oil.
Olive oil, good. Anybody over here? Fish. Who said fish? Okay. She just won a trip to Hawaii. I'm like, okay. Fish. So, yeah, Japanese, you're close. It's the Eskimos. The Eskimos consume, you know what they eat? They eat whale blubber. Now, whale blubber is loaded with fat. And they eat it for breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's basically what's available to them. It's loaded with fat. What kind of fat, though? Omega-3, which is the fat that's found in fish. It's an oil that, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Your body needs omega-3. Many people here are deficient in it because we don't eat enough of these kinds of fats. But the omega-3 oil seems to keep the blood vessels and the heart very healthy. They don't have virtually any heart disease. So if you know anybody going into cardiology, make sure they don't open up by the Eskimos. They're going to have a tough time making a living. You mentioned the Japanese. The Japanese are also big fish eaters and have very good cardiovascular health. And in the Scandinavian countries in Europe, they eat fish about 5 times a week. And they also have very good heart health. So I'm going to suggest that you think about maybe incorporating a little more fish in your diet. Fatty fish, things like salmon, or mackerel, or sardines, or whatever. It could. Okay, good. That's a good question. So you're asking about mercury in fish. I want to tell you, the only kosher fish that we have to be a little bit concerned about with mercury content is tuna. Tuna tends to be a higher mercury fish. So if you find that you're eating a lot of canned tuna, switch over to canned salmon. It's a much better fish. In the canned salmon, you'll get more omega-3, more vitamin D, more calcium if you eat those little bones, you know, the soft bones. So it's a better choice, and you won't have the issue with the mercury. Well, the salmon is much lower. In other words, we're really not concerned about the amounts in these other fish. Tuna tends to be a higher source. So I would say if you are eating tuna, maybe limit it to once a week or try to switch to salmon. Let me just cover a few more points, then we're going to take more questions and comments as we go through. Statistics show that if a person has 1 serving of a fatty fish a week, it could reduce the risk of sudden cardiac arrest by 50%. Now, that's a very good heart health statistic. Okay, other tips that you could do to improve your fat intake is to cut back on saturated fats, fats that are found primarily in red meats, in full-fat dairy products like cheese and whole milk and butter and things like that, and use some of the other oils and fats that you mentioned earlier. Avocado is a very healthy oil that lowers cholesterol. The oils that are found in nuts and seeds are healthier oils. Using a little bit of olive oil maybe instead of butter or other things like that would be very good. So lowering your saturated fats, incorporating healthier oils in moderation because they do have a lot of calories, and incorporating more of the omega-3, which is primarily found in fish, but it is in other foods also, like flax seeds that are ground up, contain a source of omega-3, and there are other foods that contain small amounts. Okay, let me just give you a couple of other points. There's also a very bad fat called hydrogenated oils or hydrogenated fats. Some people are familiar with it, not everybody is. I'm going to explain to you what a hydrogenated oil is. A hydrogenated oil is, I'll give you an example. If you go to the supermarket and you look on aisle number 5 where they have all those bottles of oil, and you pick up a bottle of corn oil, what state is it in? It's what? It's liquid. Liquid at room temperature, fine. Then you go to aisle number 4, and you pick up a container of margarine, and you look at the first ingredient, and it says corn oil. And you say, well, I don't understand something. The margarine is like solid, and the corn oil is liquid. What happened? So what they did is they took the corn oil, and they put it through a process where they heat it up at very high temperatures, at 700 degrees Fahrenheit. They force it to accept what we call a hydrogen ion. They changed it chemically, and they made it solid. Once you make an oil solid, it's now saturated. And these are the saturated fats in the diet are the main types of fats that raise our cholesterol levels. That's the biggest culprit in elevating cholesterol levels, is a diet high in saturated fats. So we're going to take questions at the end. Hold the question for a moment, okay? So we'll talk. You'll bring that up in a moment, okay? So this is a very important concept, to try to avoid these hydrogenated fats are man-made fats, and they are unhealthy. They increase the risk of heart disease and stroke. And there are margarines today that are made without trans fats or these hydrogenated fats. You look on the label, it will say no trans fats or no hydrogenated fats. One is, for example, Smart Balance, Benecal. There's a few of them out there. But those will be better choices. Those will be better choices. Really, the extra virgin olive oil is really the best, because that will lower your cholesterol by lowering your bad cholesterol, but it won't affect your good cholesterol. The other oils lower both. Okay, let me give you a couple of other tips. Dietary fiber is very important for heart health and cardiovascular health. Fiber is found where? It's found in plant foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains like brown rice, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, 100% whole wheat breads. Okay? It's also found in nuts and seeds. It's also found in beans and lentils and chickpeas and legumes. Okay? So getting more fiber in. You know what fiber does in the body? It acts like a broom. It sweeps cholesterol out of the bloodstream. So it's a very important food. I would try to avoid foods that don't contain fiber, like sugar and white flour. Do you know that when the Pilgrims came to this country in the 1600s, the average person back then was consuming 7 pounds of sugar a year. Today, the average person is consuming somewhere between 125 and 150 pounds of sugar a year. And if you're consuming that much sugar, there's no room really in the diet left for the fiber and all the other minerals that the heart needs for good health. Because when you eat white bread or foods that are white flour, the minerals and vitamins were stripped out of it. That's why it becomes white, because it's the vitamins and minerals that give the food its color. You take them out, it loses its color. And once you process or refine a grain, the magnesium, the B vitamins, everything is stripped out. These are all the nutrients that the heart needs, that the blood vessels need for good health. The trace minerals like manganese and zinc and selenium and copper. These minerals are very important for the arteries and for the cardiovascular system. If they're not in the diet, the system starts to deteriorate. The arteries can't rebuild themselves properly. They develop lesions. They're more prone to plaque formation and all sorts of problems. So really eating whole foods and staying away from processed foods is going to be very important for you. Garlic. Anybody here like garlic? They say that garlic helps prevent you from getting sick. And the reason they say is because it makes you smell so bad, it keeps sick people away from you. So then you're less prone to getting sick. But the truth of the matter is, that might be one reason. Garlic is good for the cardiovascular system. Why? Because garlic inhibits platelet aggregation, meaning it prevents the blood from clumping or clotting. Okay? And it causes a little bit of a thinning effect of the blood. So that's a good thing. Garlic has those properties, so it is good. So the recommendation is crushing maybe a clove of garlic and crushing it into your food, mixing it into your salad or into your brown rice or something healthy like that. So getting some crushed garlic into your diet is a good thing. Okay, I don't know if anybody here eats nuts, but nuts, many people think that nuts are a fattening food, an unhealthy food. They don't eat them. The truth is, nuts are an exceptionally healthy food in moderation, because they do have a lot of calories. But I'll just give you a little statistic. I think this was a study done by Harvard. They found that 50% people who eat nuts 4 times a week have 50% fewer heart attacks than those people that don't eat nuts. And they're talking, the study was done with walnuts. Walnuts happen to be one of the nuts that contain omega-3. So other nuts are healthy also. They contain what we call omega-6 oils. But the point is, getting a small handful of nuts in a few times a week could add to your general cardiovascular health and so on. Okay, let me give you a few more things that are important for heart health, and then we'll open up for a few questions. Sleep. Before I even talk about sleep, let me tell you something else first. one of the reasons we don't really think about the cardiovascular system or the heart is because, you know what we do? We tend to take things for granted. You know, the heart, we don't seem to have any heart problems, thank God, so we just take it for granted. Don't think about it too much. But I want to tell you, one of the ways to develop a greater sense of appreciation for things is to try to understand what that item is doing for you. So I'm going to show you how you can develop a greater sense of appreciation for the heart. And if you think about this, you'll have a greater desire to do things to promote better heart health. So first of all, this miraculous organ is really a pump. The heart is actually a muscle that pumps. You know what it pumps? It pumps 6,000 quarts of blood through your body every day. Think about that. 6,000 quarts are being pumped through your blood every day, through your body every day. The heart pumps this blood through thousands of miles of blood vessels. Amazing. Inside the body, if you look at the capillaries and the arteries and the little blood vessels that are microscopic, there are thousands of miles. The heart is pumping 6,000 quarts through thousands of miles of blood vessels for you every day. Listen to this. The heart beats, you know how many times a day? I doubt if anybody here has ever counted how many times a day the heart beats in a 24-hour period. 100,000 times a day. Just think about that for a second. 100,000 times a day. It's unbelievable of what this organ is doing for us. Now, and it does it humbly. It keeps this routine up 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without any vacation time. Could you imagine if the heart knocked on your door and said, listen, I've been working for you for many years. I just want to take 2 weeks off to go to Florida this winter. I think you would say, no deal, you're not going, keep doing what you're doing for me. And then if the heart came back and said, what about an hour off? You would say, no way, buddy, keep up what you're doing. And what if the heart just said, let me just skip the next 6 beats? I don't think you'd be happy about that either. So I'm urging you to develop a greater sense of hakaras hatov, of appreciation for what this magnificent organ is doing for you, and take steps to treat it in a way that it will allow it doing what it needs to be doing for many years to come. Sleep is the heart's vacation time. In other words, heart rate slows down when you sleep. It's the heart's rest phase. Many people have a sleep deficit. They do not get enough sleep. And you could be harming the cardiovascular system, the heart. They did a big study with women. They found that women who get too little sleep are more prone to obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. So I want to tell you, what's considered enough is really about 8 hours a night. 7 is pretty good also. 6 is getting a little low, but once you drop below 6, then it becomes more of a problem. So think about things like sleep habits. Think of ways that you could maybe get more sleep. Obviously, things like smoking and obesity increase your risk for heart disease and many other illnesses. Exercise, very important in moderation. Aerobic, regular physical activity, very important to strengthen the muscle. There are 600 muscles in the body. The heart is one of them and needs to be exercised to be kept fit and in good shape. In terms of beverages that promote heart health, green tea, even black tea, red wine in moderation are very, promote cardiovascular health as well. Also, keeping the diet colorful, using a lot of colorful foods, especially things like raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, pomegranate. All of these things are very heart-healthy foods as well. Get appropriate checkups and screenings, very important for heart health. What I'm going to do is I prepared an article for you which gives a little bit of a summary of the things I spoke about with some contact information. So if anybody wants to email me a question, you're welcome to do it. I'm just going to give my email address for those watching, going to watch the film. So if they want to email me a question, it's rmshields, SHIELDS, 62@verizon.net. So once again, that's rmshields, SHIELDS62@verizon.net. You'll have it in the contact information. Let's open up for a few questions or comments. Okay, I'll repeat the question. Go ahead.
Question for you. You mentioned that fish is very healthy to eat, salmon. I was told that if you don't buy Alaskan salmon, it's as if you're not having that omega that you need in order to be eating.
Okay, very good question. Yes, there is some confusion about fish and types of fish. She's referring to something called farm salmon. Farm salmon means they raise salmon in tanks, fish tanks, and they give them not really a natural diet. It's more of a, not really the natural foods they would be eating, and also they're not really swimming. So they tend to get more fatty tissue, and they don't have as much omega-3. So it's probably the wild salmon, I would imagine, is a better choice. Now, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. How do you know the difference? A good question. 80% of the salmon sold and raised that you buy fresh is farmed. The only way you could really know, there might be ways to know by looking. I'm not a fish expert, but you would have to really ask and say, I want wild salmon.
It has a nasty smell.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but maybe if you say so. What I would say is this: you could ask if you want to buy fresh, natural or unfarmed salmon. You'd probably have to ask and say, "This is what I want." It's usually more expensive. The other thing you could possibly think about doing is, a lot of the canned salmon is wild. It will say on the can. So that's a way to get some. If you're looking for a healthy, quick meal, and you open a small can of wild salmon, check on the can. It will say, natural.
Is the omega-3 in the non-wild salmon?
It is, but probably not as much. Okay, but in the wild salmon, I would imagine you would have a higher concentration of omega-3.
But the question is the farm salmon better than meat?
Good question. I would say it might still be a little better than meat, but I just wouldn't eat it so often. I would try to get you know what I mean? I wouldn't eat any one fish only. I would try to get different types of fish when you eat it. And if you get fish in a couple of times a week or 3 times a week, that's doing pretty good.
Salmon or any fish?
I mean other types of fish too. In the article here, I mentioned some other fish that could be used in the article here that also have higher amounts of omega-3. Okay, even flounder or any dry fish will have omega-3, but in smaller amounts. So you could vary the fish in your diet, but I would say at least once a week get a higher fat fish in the diet, like salmon or one of the other ones that are mentioned here, sardines and so on. Okay, let's take. Okay, good point. In terms of supplementing, there are fish oil supplements. So if somebody is not a fish eater, if somebody has a problem with the fish for whatever reason, or just doesn't get enough of it in, there are supplements. The only caution on supplements is that they should be purified, so all the mercury and toxins are taken out. They should be, molecularly distilled, so all these harmful things are out. They should be dated, so you have an expiration date. And you should get from a reliable manufacturer. If you need some help with that, email us or contact us. We do carry a supplement that we could give you more information on that is well screened and checked and all of those kind of things. Okay, go ahead.
Recently, somebody introduced me to omega-3 from a plant from Israel. It's a CHAZAQ plant.
Yes.
And I heard a lot of miracle and good thing about it. And I'm wondering if you heard about it.
Okay, she's talking about a plant base, a plant from Israel. I guess a green plant, probably like a seed. That she says has an omega-3 content. It's very possible. I'm not familiar with it, but if you have any information you want to send me or get to me, I'd like to see more information on it as well. Okay, things like, you can get small amounts of omega-3 from beans, from dark leafy green vegetables, from pumpkin seeds, from walnuts, from crushed or ground flax seeds, like we mentioned, and of course, fish is really the best source, but there are others. Ground up? Yeah.
And then it's even more dangerous.
Yeah, it has to be packaged well, it has to be refrigerated, or you can grind it yourself and refrigerate it, just use what you need. But there are companies that make it packaged in a container, airtight, and if you refrigerate it, it's important. Okay, let's take any question on the men's side here, yeah.
What's the danger of farm salmon?
Okay, we spoke before. The question is, what is the harm or the danger of farm salmon? I don't know if I'd really call it a danger, but I would say like this. The farm salmon may have higher concentrations of toxins in the body of the fish because it's not swimming. So it has more fatty tissue. So the mercury, PCBs, and other contaminants may be in higher levels in the fish. And also you may not be getting as much omega-3 because the diet of the fish is like a man-made diet as opposed to a natural diet of what the salmon in the wild would be eating. So that's really some of the concerns, possibly.
What do you think about the diet which completely cuts out the sugar in any food altogether? Good,
I think any diet that eliminates refined or processed sugars as much as possible is going to be a very big plus, a big, big plus.
Because my grandmother told me that sugar before the revolution was considered to be the biggest luxury. And it wasn't even like white refined sugar, it was grayish.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah. Okay. So white refined sugars is really a very unhealthy thing. Yes.
Is it generally recommended to, if you're going to have sugar, to have brown sugar?
Okay. Brown sugar really is not that much of a benefit because what brown sugar really is, it's white sugar that's like spray painted with a little molasses. So it gives it a little brown taste, tinge to it. Raw sugar is also really mostly processed. What's a little bit better than the actual sugar is if you go back a step before it becomes crystals, is molasses. You know, the blackstrap molasses. That's right before it becomes the crystal sugar. The blackstrap molasses, you see, notice what it has? It has a nice dark color to it. The dark color indicates that the iron, the B vitamins, the calcium is still part of it. But then as they process it more and more and they strip these things away, it starts changing color until it becomes this color. Okay, maybe one or two more questions? Yeah.
Nuts you mentioned is very healthy to eat. I also read a study that if you buy nuts that are already broken from the shell, so the nutrients value is no longer
lower. Yes, yes.
Lower.
Okay, once you take a nut or any, once you open the package that a food is in, if you cut open an apple, it starts to brown, it starts to get affected by oxygen. It's the same thing with nuts. If they're in the shell, they're going to be fresher and better. One of the nuts out of the shell that holds up better is the almond, because the almond has a skin around it, and if you keep it in the refrigerator, closed in a container, it will hold up pretty well. Other nuts will go rancid more quickly once they're out of the shell. So you should be careful to not buy a lot of nuts. Try to keep them in the shells. And if you want, if you get almonds or that's a better choice. Other ones that you get, if they're out of the shell, keep them refrigerated, buy a smaller amount, or try to eat them in the shell. Good point.
What about peanuts?
Peanuts you can get in the shell. Roasted peanuts are fine. You know what the healthiest part of the peanut they say is? You know the red skin that covers the peanut? That's where a lot of the antioxidants are, so it's good to eat that if you could. Yeah. Let me, go ahead.
What about whole wheat flour? Is there precedence on that?
Yeah, whole wheat flour would be better. If it's really 100% whole wheat, or if you buy bread, if it says wheat bread, it may not be the real thing. You want to look for 100% whole wheat. That's really the right thing to look for. Okay, maybe one more question? Yeah.
No, what I have just to make a remark. Nuts supposed to be raw, because once they are roasted, they become hydrogenated. That's with the hot oil.
I see what you're saying. I don't know. It's a good point. Raw nuts are probably better. If they're roasted but not burnt, a little bit, I think they're still okay. They're still pretty good. Yeah, I wouldn't, without oil and just a little bit. Okay, I think we're going to hold it here. I have an article for you. Yeah, one more question? Go ahead. What about garlic?
If a person can't take garlic fresh,
yes.
the pills.
Okay, if you can't take, it's a good question. We'll finish with this question. If you can't use raw garlic because of the difficulty on your stomach or your breath or whatever, it bothers you, irritates your stomach, you could cook it a little bit. But try not to cook it all the way through. Just cook it a little bit to make it a little bit less strong. Even if you eat cooked garlic cloves, it still has some health benefits. But some of the active ingredients will get destroyed in cooking. What you could do is there are garlic capsules that, if they contain the active ingredient, which is allicin, you look on the label. If it says active ingredients are in there, that's a good sign. If you want to contact us, we can give you more information. There are companies that make the that we could guide you to that have that active ingredient. Okay, if you